Hello and welcome to this presentation on how to re-establish a full emotional connection for people with Asperger syndrome by removing the wall of glass. In this video today we are going to see a few very important elements about Asperger and autism that will probably challenge the knowledge you have and your perspective on it. We're going to see first that autism and Asperger are actually not the same thing and why, based on biology, and why most of your difficulties, if you suffer from Asperger syndrome, are from the same root cause, something we call the wall of glass. And finally, a new hope for eliminating those symptoms of Asperger syndrome. Alright, so let's start with a quick presentation. My name is Gaëtan Klein, I am from France, and I am a certified therapist and researcher from the Institute for the Study of Peak States, which I will tell you more about later. And I used to suffer myself when I was young to feeling different, feeling disconnected and separated from people, not understanding people and their emotions, their behavior, and feeling like I was living in my own bubble and I would never truly feel the satisfaction of being connected with people, and a lot of other symptoms from Asperger syndrome. If you haven't seen my testimonial, you can stop this video now and watch my testimonial if you want to know more about my journey and how I finally overcame this issue. But let's talk about you and let's talk about Asperger. So what is Asperger? Well, the classical definition is that Asperger syndrome is a personality disorder characterized by significant difficulties in social interaction and nonverbal communication, along with restrictive and repetitive patterns of behavior and interest. So that's a pretty broad definition, but what does that mean exactly and how is it a problem? How does this work? Well, Asperger syndrome has been considered to be a milder form of autism and included in the large autism spectrum disorder category, which again is pretty broad, pretty large. And from the standard psychiatric norm, it's a trouble of unknown etiology, of unknown origin, of unknown cause. So if you go to see a doctor and you ask him, what is the cause of autism? He will probably say, oh, there's something wrong with the brain and that causes autism. And then you ask them, but what is going wrong with the brain exactly? What is happening in the biology and how do we fix this? And probably people will tell you, we don't know and there's no way to fix it. Well, that was the case until today, but I will show you today something completely new, completely different. But first, let's reflect a little bit on this spectrum disorder, right? So the classical autism spectrum disorder, probably in your mind, in the mind of most people, looks like something like that, where you have a continuity of different issues ranging from Asperger, attention deficit disorder, to other form of autism and severe autism at the end. And there is kind of a progression and everything is kind of linked together. And everything is kind of linked together. However, if you look at Asperger per se and ADD per se, the symptoms are very different, right? So what does it have to do with autism? What is the link between the different elements of this spectrum? Well, it turns out this spectrum has not really been created to help people who suffer from the disorders, but it has been created for professionals who understand how to categorize people and how to manage them with coping strategy. But it's not really helpful if you want to understand the cause, the origin of these different issues. So there are two problems with this model really. The first problem is that it's lumping issues together even though it's just based on how it looks like, how it appears. So it's based on the symptoms. We're lumping things together because the symptoms look somewhat similar. But this reasoning is not really valid. If you look at elephants and mice, both animals have 4 legs, right? So are they the same thing? Well, not. Of course not, because they have fundamental differences. And you recognize that elephants and mice are really different things. So based on the fact that they both have 4 legs, you cannot lump them together and say this is one and the same thing, it's just kind of a spectrum. No, There are very important differences. So it's the same reasoning with autism. The symptoms look somewhat similar, but if you really look into details, they're not so similar actually. And secondly, this spectrum disorder model does not say anything about the cause or the causes, and there are no treatment available except coping strategies. But maybe things can change. So let's imagine for a moment, okay, just for a moment, that these issues are actually three independent and unrelated spectrum disorders in their own right. So Asperger is a spectrum disorder of its own right. ADD is a different issue of its own right, which is also a spectrum disorder, meaning you can have it intensely or moderately. And autism is yet another disorder, and they're all unrelated. Let's imagine that for a moment. Well, if you separate those different categories, you can start to analyze the differences, and there are fundamental differences. And you can start to analyze what's going on and what is the origin of these problems. Now, of course, these issues can overlap or not. That means that anybody can be in any given position of having any one of the three problems or having a mix of them. But let's say for a moment that they are different problems with different origins. Then we can start to separate things and take a clearer look at what's going on. In our research, and we've done research extensively for 20 years on autism, we found that these issues can be separated, meaning you can have autism without Asperger, you can have Asperger without autism, and ADD is yet another thing. And we've identified other troubles and factors that can worsen the symptoms, or the symptoms in themselves look somewhat similar, and you can mix them together, or you can confuse one for the other. For example, we've looked at a lot of people who've been diagnosed with autism who didn't have anything like we think is autism, but they instead had something called traumatic brain injury. And you can have brain damage, traumatic brain injury, from different events that you don't really realize have been impacting your brain, and you can have TBI from birth, for example. Now, there are other factors that are really important, such as heavy metal toxicity or diseases that plays a role in the appearance of those symptoms. But if you start to separate things, you can analyze them differently. Now, our approach is very different from the traditional approach on autism. And to tell you a little bit about us, we started exploring the link between psychological traumas and optimal health 30 years ago. And this led us to discover that psychological traumas are not due to the shocking nature of events, but instead they are due to a biological problem inside the cells, something that is known today as epigenetic damage. I will tell you more about this in details. But very simply, our point of view is that brain problems and whole body problems very often comes from cell problems, right? So that means that if your cell has a problem, if you have a problem at the cellular level, this problem will be carried on to the global level of organs and the whole body. So instead of looking at issues within the brain and try to understand what is going on in the brain, what is not working well, how is it supposed to work, instead we look at a more fundamental level, which is the cellular level. Because if the cellular level has a health issue, you cannot really fix the issue at the brain level, because the underlying biology comes from the cell. Before we become a whole body with millions and millions and millions of cells, we just start from one cell. The first cell that becomes you when your parents are mating and you are conceived. If that first cell has issues, then your health cannot be better than this first cell, if that makes sense. So instead of looking at the brain, we look at the cell and try to understand what was going wrong at the cellular level. Is it something that we can analyze? Is there a biology that we can understand? And that is the case, actually. So our method is to understand that cell problems originate from pre-birth biological development, right? from the moment you are conceived and that first cell that will become you appears to the moment you become a baby and you're born 9 months later, you have a lot of things happening biologically, and we study this. So we ask ourselves, when did things go wrong? When, during the development, did the problems start to happen? And we study pre-birth development because that's where epigenetic damages disrupt or correct biological development. So if the present is here and you have an issue, instead of looking at this timeline, this biographical timeline, we take a look at what's going on before that. So we go before birth to conception, and even the egg and the sperm development are interesting because you have a lot of biological stages that happens. So if the sperm has an issue, this issue will be carried on at conception, and then you're born with it, and then you live with it until today. Right? You cannot compensate for a lack or damage at this very early level. And it turns out there are a lot of what we call key developmental events where things can go wrong, leading to issues later on in life. And that's why we focus our effort on understanding this biological development. And that's why our approach is to look for the origin of psychological and biological problems in the earliest biological development. And that means before we are born or before we're even conceived. So that goes very deep. And from this perspective, we studied what causes autism and the key developmental moments, the biological mechanism, how things are supposed to happen ideally, and what goes wrong. And eventually we found that ADD and Asperger's seems to have nothing to do with autism because they happen at very different moments and the biological mechanisms are completely different. So, what causes Asperger's syndrome? Well, it turns out that we found there is a specific kinesthetic marker for Asperger's syndrome that we see over and over and over all the time. And it's a feeling of being surrounded by a wall of glass that blocks you, that prevents you from feeling the outside world, and especially from connecting to other people from the heart. And that means if you have this wall of glass, you cannot really emotionally connect with people, you cannot feel their emotions, and you don't understand their emotions, you don't have the information, it's blocked. And we call it the wall of glass because it's a word that many people can relate to, even if people sometimes describe it like it's a fog or it's an invisible barrier between me and people, or someone used the word scaphandre, it's like I'm wearing this scaphandre and I cannot be part of the world. But anyway, the feeling is that there is something that blocks you from feeling other people's emotions. So it's a bit like being behind a window and looking at life but not feeling that you are really part of life. So you cannot touch it, you cannot see it, it's invisible, but somehow you know that it's there. And you know that it's preventing you from connecting to other people, especially from the heart. Now, this wall of glass can be pretty close to your body, or it can be somewhat a little bit distant. So the feeling depends, different people have different feelings about it, but the feeling is that there is a separation, there is a blockage, and you cannot go past it from the point of view of emotional connection. And people who have this wall of glass experience will often try to describe it with different words and different ways of explaining it. But it's hard because you cannot see it, you cannot touch it. So you try to explain what it does to you. And very often, I would say, when I had this issue myself, or all people have said to me, life is happening outside of me. Or I am a spectator, I am watching life like it's happening on a scene, on a stage, but I'm not on the stage. I'm just a spectator of life. Or I am different from others, something I used to repeat over and over again when I was a kid. I am not connected, I am separated. Other people don't understand me, and I don't understand them. Something I used to say over and over also. I am looking at life through a glass. There is an impassable barrier between people and me, or I am living in a bubble. or other ways of expressing it. When I was a kid, I was trying to tell my parents that I was different, I was not like the other kids, but I could not explain why. I could not explain to them why it was so, but I had this feeling that there was a lack of connection and I was just not part of other people's lives. And I could not explain it because it was normal. Since you're born with it, it seems normal, but at the same time you feel that there is something wrong. So does that relate to your experience? I guess so. So this wall of glass creates the main symptoms of Asperger's syndrome, meaning, most importantly, it brings you the feeling of being emotionally disconnected and separated from others. And very often you feel that you can't understand them and they can't understand you also. Secondly, with this wall of glass, you do not have any cognitive difficulty. It's quite the opposite. Your mind works very well. So using your intellectual mind is easy for you. And third, you might be more interested by technical or specific topics. That's not always the case, but most often that's the case because you are using your mind and everything for you has to be rational, and technical topics are interesting because you can analyze and understand them. But everything that has to do with heart-to-heart connection is more difficult. That's really what it does. Here are some other characteristics from Asperger's. The wall of glass also disrupts the feeling of space around you. Because you have this blockage, even if you cannot really touch it, you somehow you feel it and you feel that there is something weird with space. And that leads to things such as clumsiness or bad coordination. I used to have that. I used to break objects, all the time. Not liking physical touch or people getting in your space. So many people with a wall of glass say that, oh, I don't like when people come too close, or I don't like when people touch me. And that's because you feel that people are getting into your space, and that's not really nice. Not liking sports, especially team sports, can be another way of looking at it, and intense movement. And these symptoms are not always there if you have the wall of glass, but they're there most of the time in most people. You also never really feel part of the group, and you can have left-right differences, and you can also have dyspraxia. So all these feelings that space is hard to understand. Why is it the case with sports, and especially team sports? It's because you don't understand what's going on with people's movement, what their intentions are, where they're going, and that may be one of the reasons why you don't like it. But again, that's not always the case. These are just common characteristics. Here are some other characteristics and consequences of this wall of glass. The most important one maybe is that recognizing facial expressions and meanings is more difficult. Why? Well, because that's one of the first things that we learn as a human being. When we're a baby, all we are doing is being attentive to other people and looking and watching what other people do. And people who take care of us, or parents for example, they communicate with us the way they can. So they make sounds, they make facial expressions, they talk to you in certain ways, and mothers tries to teach to the baby how to communicate with facial expressions. In babies who don't have this wall of glass, this happens well and naturally, and they learn how to interpret people's facial expressions because they can feel other people's emotions. They have this heart-to-heart connection, so this goes on naturally. But if you have this wall of glass, this does not happen naturally. This does not happen at all sometimes. And that means that the baby cannot analyze and understand facial expressions because the baby cannot link it to emotion and different states. And therefore, later on in life, you don't understand people's facial expressions. Or at another level, second degree and jokes and subtle nuances of communication might elude you. And that's because of the same problem. You haven't been able to learn what people express when they are behaving a certain way, and all these nuances of communication that should come naturally if you wouldn't have the wall of glass. But since you have it, this cannot work well. So people with a wall of glass very often try to understand other people's emotions and behavior with their mind, with their brain. And that works more or less, sometimes less and more, because you can somehow analyze people's behavior, but this will always be an effort and an intellectual understanding. And when you do that, that's because you don't have this direct, natural connection, intuitive connection from the heart that would allow you to understand people naturally. Right? So you try to compensate with your mind. And that can work, but that's never truly satisfying and efficient. I remember when I was a kid, when I was 12 or 13, I just decided, that's it, I will just never understand people completely. I have to deal with it, I will always be separated, but I will try to manage and go through life without this ability. And when I was 22 and I got to, or 21, when I went to psychology university, I was completely amazed because now I had explanations about people's behavior and that makes sense. But that was just a compensation from this direct understanding from the heart. And the difference is very, very big. So another thing that happens when you have this wall of glass and you cannot understand people and they cannot understand you because there is this disconnect, is people will often blame you for your behavior and your lack of response to their behavior, because for them it's natural. And they will say things that might not be very nice. And you might have heard things like, you are cold, or you are arrogant, while all you've tried to do was to be warm and to be nice with people, and you don't feel like you're being arrogant at all. But people will say that to you. Or they will say, you're not committed, you're not participating, you are weird, you are a Miss Know-it-all or Mr. Know-it-all, you don't understand, you are rigid, you are not making efforts, you are condescending, you're complicated, you're not present, you're not listening, you are in a bubble, you are asocial, you are mysterious, you are not sharing, or nicer things like you're an alien or stop behaving like an autistic. Well, that hurts, right? That's not nice because you're not trying to be mean or to be distant. Quite the opposite, you're trying your best to be with people, but it just doesn't work. And one of the worst things that people can tell you, that I've heard sometimes, is you have no compassion, you have no empathy. While all I was trying to do, and all you've been trying to do probably, is to have empathy and to have compassion and to connect with people. And despite all these efforts that you've been making, it just doesn't work. All of this comes from the wall of glass. The wall of glass prevents you from intuitively understanding the adjustments in communication that are needed in different contexts and with different people. Now, here are some other characteristics. You might have this feeling that you are never really included in groups. And when you are in a group of people, it feels uneasy, you don't know how to manage different conversation and everybody speaking at the same time, and it can be overwhelming or uneasy. So most of the people who have this wall of glass just prefers one-on-one interaction because it's easier to manage. So that's very common. Another feeling that is very common is feeling a lack of personal recognition from others. And that means that you feel that people don't recognize your talents, your uniqueness, they don't recognize that you're a nice person or that you are just there. It feels like people are not seeing you and not recognizing that you're there and that it's nice to be around you when you're a nice person. And all of this hurts. Now, here are some other things that you should know about to understand fully how it happens. You can have subclinical symptoms of this wall of glass and of Asperger. That means that not everybody will have all the symptoms and the full-on experience and the complete lack of connection. Some people will have more moderate symptoms and will experience this not as severely or intensely as others. And when you are below 50% or around 20%, the symptoms are there, so you suffer, you struggle, you know that you have this issue, but it's not clear enough or strong enough that other people and professionals would recognize it. So in that case, you might not be diagnosed with it, but you still have a part of this issue. In that case, you will feel different, you feel that something is not right, and you feel that you have this lack of emotional connection with people, and you can sense this experience of having a wall of glass, barrier, this invisible problem between you and people. More on that later. What are the consequences of living with this wall of glass? Well, you live in your head, because in your head everything is working well. And you can be intellectually successful, and a lot of people who only have this and do not have autism at all will actually be very successful in life and very highly functional. But there is something missing, something that you know is not there, and you don't find this satisfaction that your heart is craving. And if you have this wall of glass, you will always struggle with relationship and intimacy, because you lack this intuitive, direct, emotional connection with people. And this can lead to disadvantage in life at the social level, and sometimes even despair, because you feel that you will never find this true connection that you're craving. And you can feel very lonely and very sad and despair that you will never find it. And I've met many people in their 40s or 50s who just abandon and say, I will never experience life like the others, I will never find satisfaction, and that's it. But that's too bad. And even sometimes people will even become bitter and have a lot of negative emotions coming from this. And many people will even end up thinking the world is against them, the world is irrational, people are crazy, people are mean, and this is bad because you don't find any joy in this. Or you might even feel that you are fundamentally flawed, and you might feel shame or guilt or blame yourself from this. So that leads to a lot of problems, and that doesn't get better as you get older. So all of that means that if we could eliminate this wall of glass, that would be a huge improvement in your quality of life, wouldn't it? Well, certainly it is, because relationships have an impact on all areas of our lives. Now, the good news of this presentation is that we do have a process, a protocol, a technique to eliminate this wall of glass. And if you've seen the testimonials before, you know what people experience when they go through this. But let me tell you about it. So the wall of glass, so removing the wall of glass process, is an epigenetic procedure that completely eliminates the source of this issue and all its symptoms forever. Right? It consists of several sessions with a highly skilled therapist who will guide you through the process, and it generally takes between 6 to 10 hours on average, depending on people. So again, what we are doing with the process is we're working at the cellular level, and we're trying to eliminate this problem at the cellular level so that this change carries on to the brain level, and when you eliminate the problem in the cell, automatically your brain catches on it, and this experience of having this wall of glass just disappears. And it's pretty dramatic and pretty fast. So there is a moment in time, a developmental event, where this happens. So if there are epigenetic damages at this moment, you end up with a wall of glass. And that's what we will reverse. Because without those epigenetic damages, the event happens smoothly and you have no wall of glass. So we're going to reverse the problem at the origin of it. So during the treatment, we will regress you to this event. That means we will take you back in the past, and it will feel like you're going back to this event before you're born. And that will trigger the issues of this event. And they will show up as emotions, sensations, such as fear, sadness, or feeling trapped, and so on. And then we will guide you with gentle trauma healing techniques that will reverse those emotional struggles. And you will become more and more peaceful, more and more calm, and you will even feel that the event itself is changing. And of course, this is quite new, maybe for you, but this is something we do on a regular basis and everybody can do it. It's a natural ability that human beings have. We just know how to take people there. And when you do the process, at the end, you feel that the wall of glass is lifting up. It's disappearing and you know that it's gone forever. You have this feeling that, oh, now finally I feel what I've been wanting to feel. And you start making more profound and hurtful connection with other people very rapidly. And that's absolutely amazing. When I experienced this, when I felt this huge weight lifting up and disappearing, and it was like an opening of space, and suddenly I could feel other people's emotion. It's amazing. It's a wonderful thing because it is really satisfying for your being, for your heart. When you start feeling people, you start to make connection. That's something that I have been craving it for 26 years. For 26 years, I believe that I could never have this true connection, friendship, love, and so on. I will always be a little bit different, a little bit apart. But when this changed, oh wow, this was absolutely amazing, and it's a memory I cherish to this day. And whenever I witness other people go through the same transformation, it's absolutely uplifting and joyful because people feel this freedom, this space, and this satisfaction very rapidly. It's really amazing. So I wish that we could help you with that too. So removing the wall of glass has many advantages. First, you instantly retrieve this emotional connection with people. And it feels like your heart-brain starts working finally. And that doesn't mean that your heart was not working, but it could not do what it was supposed to do. Your heart is made to connect with people, to have relationships, sharing, exchanging, and if you have this barrier, this wall of glass, your heart cannot do it. And that's really sad. But when you remove it, your heart brain starts saying, oh yes, no, I can do what I want. I can connect with people, and that's absolutely a blessing. And you have this feeling of connecting and understanding because you sense other people's emotion much, much better. Now, if you are a high functional person, or if you have a high intellectual potential, that will not go away. All right, that will not change. You will remain the same at this level. And your relational intelligence increases rapidly, and there is a sense of satisfaction, and the relationship becomes easier and more fulfilling. And that's really, really nice. So that's what we do. And removing the wall of glass feels like you're coming out of jail. It feels like you have been in an invisible prison for your life, and this prison is lifted and it's gone forever. And that's really, really good. It's the same feeling as going out of jail. And you do not feel anymore that life happens outside of you. You feel that you are part of life. And if you think about it, relationships are important in all areas of life. And especially if you think about happiness and being fulfilled by your life, most of your happiness will come from relationship. That's how it's supposed to be, at least. If you have this wall of glass, maybe this has been taken away from you. You haven't been able to experience it as you would like to, but you cannot help but feel and know intuitively that this is what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be happy with people. And actually, if you look at clinical studies and research that has been made in universities about happiness, they all show that what makes us happy, what brings us the most happiness, is not material comfort or money or even intellectual satisfaction or achievement. What makes us really happy is sharing experiences with other people. Now, maybe you haven't experienced this yet in your life, and maybe you thought this would never be available, but it is available now. We have this process to remove this wall of glass. It works. and therefore all these areas of your life will improve dramatically. And these are not minor areas of life, right? We're talking about understanding seduction, feeling love, sharing love, and being able to build relationships that you enjoy and that are positive for the long term. So we're talking about romance, we're talking about true friendship and feeling understood and connected. We're talking about being able to create better relationship in your community and feeling part of the life. And of course, family life becomes much better, much more functional, much easier, because you understand yourself, you understand yourself and your family much better. And of course, work, career, but also association, having projects, being able to connect with people who will help you with your project and building something together. Even struggling together with people is satisfying at some level, because overcoming struggles together, it's much more joyful and positive than doing it on your own, right? And if you look at huge achievements that human beings have made, it has always been made by teams. And that's because that's how human beings are supposed to work. We're supposed to bring our uniqueness into collective efforts, and that brings us joy and fulfillment. So if you want to improve all of this, you need to remove the wall of glass, right? And that will bring you a lot of happiness and joy. Now, we do this process as having a guarantee of results. We have what we call a pay-for-result policy. That means that if we are not successful in eliminating your symptoms, you do not pay anything. You only pay if you feel that this wall of glass is gone and you have heart-to-heart connection with people. And we do this because, one, we are very confident about our work, we know that it works, and we know how we can analyze if it's going to work with somebody or not. So basically we know very well when it's going to work, and we know when it's not going to work, so we can tell you right away. And therefore we want to protect you, because this is completely new. Of course, this is not available anywhere else in the world yet. And this is groundbreaking, so many people could be a little bit suspicious about it. So we decided that we have this pay-for-result policy because we want to protect you. So we are taking the risk, and you have nothing to lose. You have everything to gain with this. So who is this for? Well, this is for you if you've been feeling separated and disconnected from other people, and you feel that relationships are not truly satisfying, and you want to experience more of life. This is for you if you recognize yourself in the symptoms we described. So whether you have been diagnosed formally with Asperger or autism or not, we can assess if this will help you, and we can help you. And you need to be ready to invest financially in increasing your quality of life. You need to be ready to take action now and follow instructions for a few sessions. Wait, it's not really complicated. Even a child can do it. But you need to be ready to make some efforts, of course. And you need to be open about new possibilities, because this is probably you've never heard of something like that, and things are possible now. But you need to be open about it, because this can be pretty surprising. In any case, you have everything to gain from this. So let's work together. Let's see if we can help you or not. This decision could change your life forever, for the better. And we need to discuss the situation and assess your situation, so we can tell you right away if we can help you or not. If we can help you, we will tell you right away, and you have the guarantee of results. If we cannot help you, we'll also tell you right away, because we don't want to waste your time and our time. So if you're interested, click in the button below this video. There is a short survey to complete, and then we will have a conversation. If you're not at ease on the phone or on video, we can always exchange text messages and emails. But if possible, we would like to meet you and have this conversation over video conference if it's possible, but all options are available. So click below and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Now, if you have more questions, let's look at a few common questions that people have asked us when we were telling them about our work. So, if you are a professional, if you're a doctor, if you are a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or if you're working in a parents' association, and so on, please contact us too, because we want to talk to you. We want to teach you our method and to share our discoveries with you. And what we really want to do is to make this treatment more mainstream, more available. So please, let's establish a partnership. Let's talk about it. And we are also looking to run clinical studies. So if you are working in a university or a research institute, let's connect. So what about autism? We didn't talk about autism much in this presentation because that would be too long. Now we are in the final stages of testing our new generation of techniques for autism. So please click on the autism waiting list button below this video if you want us to contact you when we have something ready. And in between, you will access the videos that will tell you more about the current state of research and the results we already have. And we have had some people that we had several years ago to completely reverse autism, and I'm talking about severe autism. So that's really interesting. And when we're moving forward, we will contact you and see how we can work together. So click on the button below if you want to know more about autism. Why have I not heard of this treatment from my doctor? Well, this is a new groundbreaking scientific discovery. It's really recent and it is not taught in medical curriculum yet. It will be years before it becomes mainstream. Now, eventually it will become mainstream because you cannot ignore it. It's so powerful. But this can take 10 years or 20 years, we don't know. So the treatment is available now, so why would you wait? And you can tell your doctor about it. Is this treatment efficient for only some people, and can I hope it will work for me? Yes, the process is extremely efficient at doing what we want it to do. In this case, it's removing the wall of glass. And our success rate is above 95%. Now, it also depends if your issue is really due to this or if it's something else. And that's why we need to assess first if this is really your problem or if you have a mix of problem or something completely different. But if you have the wall of glass and that's the source of your issue, the process is extremely efficient. Does it work on alexetemia? Well, from our testing so far, yes. It seems that alexetemia, the root cause of it is the wall of glass. In most cases. We don't have a lot of experience with it, to be honest, at the moment, but from the cases we had, alexetemia was due to the wall of glass and the treatment worked like a charm. So probably it works in general for alexetemia, unless there is a different biological cause, but it seems like the wall of glass is the root cause of it. I am, or my child is very smart. Will this change with this process? Well, no, your intellect stays the same, it's not going away. All your talents, all your abilities are there, they're yours, so they will not change. However, you will instantly find more joy in connecting with people, so you will probably want to invest more of your time and more of your energy into social interaction, social life. That's completely normal and completely positive, but your smartness does not go away. Okay, Gaetan, that looks very interesting, that looks very nice, but how do you do this? How can you reverse such a fundamental biological thing? Well, it's a bit long to explain, but if you want to understand it completely, there is a second video and this will explain to you epigenetic biology in details. And it will explain how processes work. So please watch this video if you want to know more about how we do this. This seems too good to be true. Yes, of course. Well, progress is always happening. We are now doing things that were impossible 10 years ago or 30 years ago. Things are always moving forward, right? Now, we have been doing research for 20 years, so from our point of view, this was not quick, but we came to a point where we have things that work, and tomorrow, in 10 years, this will be the new normal. So for now it's new, but yes, that's normal. That's how progress works. So why would you keep on suffering? You don't have to, actually. You can work with us and change things, and the treatment works, you have nothing to lose. Is it safe? Yes, it is safe, and safety is one of our main concerns, and we are very precautious about it. So we have been testing this exact process for 9 years. And for 9 years, it has shown no safety issues and no side effects. So it's safe. What if I have Asperger and autism? Well, in that case, both requires a separate and specific treatment because they are different things, right? And we start by autism first because autism is the most severe and the most disrupting. But we need to treat both separately. What about pervasive developmental disorder? Well, pervasive developmental disorder is a large category of problems with a variety of sources. So we need to determine the cause of an issue before we can design and offer a treatment. So in that case, if you have pervasive developmental disorder, what is it? Is it a form of autism? Is it the effect of traumatic brain injury or some kind of toxicity or something else? We need to figure it out. Sometimes we can help people, sometimes we cannot. So what should I do now? Well, you should click on the button below and contact us so we can assess how we can help you and change things. And again, the goal is to improve your quality of life in a very big and very large way, because this world of relaxed experience prevents you from experiencing life positively in areas that are so important. Relationship, friendship, love, teamwork, etc. This is so large that it impacts your whole life in some way. And things can be improved so much with this that it's a true blessing to be able to improve your quality of life and your quality of emotional connection with people. So thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. We can help you and we'll be delighted to do so. So please contact us so we can get to know each other and we'll tell you right away if we can help you. If you have more questions, feel free to watch the next videos or to send us a message so we can answer all of your concerns. But let's talk, let's work together, let's move forward and change things for the better. Thank you and have a very nice day.